Don and Steve plus John Chisum. We are thrilled to have you with us. There's so many questions. My brain is still spinning on where I want to go. One thing, though, that let's start with, and that's this new project, because that kind of gives us a foundation. You like that?
Firm foundation.
You're here all week.
Firm foundation. 30 years plus, really, because we know that the Lord is our firm foundation. But this project is really important to you, and it's fantastic.
Thank you.
But why is it important to John Chisum?
Oh, gosh, it's important on so many levels because I had the privilege of being one of the Integrity Hosanna Music worship leaders, which is kind of a fairly small group when you think about it. My album was number 54, and we broke a lot of molds with that album with a new producer, just kind of a whole new approach. But the song Firm Foundation encapsulated so much of my life, and so some things that I really, really felt strongly about saying, just that God is our healer, He's our strength, He is indeed our firm foundation if we will allow Him to be. I have to say right up front, I didn't write the song. My friends Nancy Gordon and Jamie Harville wrote it, but I got to be the champion of the song.
Oh, that's cool. Now, you say it encapsulates much of your life. What was going on in your life that you so identified and resonated with those lyrics in that song and said, man, I want to be singing this. I need to proclaim this.
I had hit rock bottom again.
Again?
Again. And
Which
again.
rock bottom was
How many rock bottoms are there?
Let's see, what day is it? I think there's a rock bottom every day. I'm an Enneagram 4, which is pretty emotional, and everything is so dramatic all the time. So I guess every 10 minutes
You're an artist.
we hit another rock bottom. But I was a child of the 60s and 70s, and there'd been unidentified trauma and abuses and things that I hadn't really dealt with in a lot of ways. And then every now and then, you'd hit this kind of slick in the road where it's like you don't have a sense of belonging to God in the way that we should from the scriptures and the word. And I had a lot of healing, but I'd not had the opportunity to express it. And, that's kind of the thing with inspiration. When God touches your life, you want to share it in some way.
Yeah.
And so I was telling all these people, about how God had really touched my life in some significant ways. And Don Moen, one of the guys at Integrity, said, we need to do a record about this. And so we started collecting songs. I was writing songs. And when my friends Nancy and Jamie came up with Firm Foundation, it's like, okay, ding, ding, that's the song. That just saes it all right there. And 30 years later, here we are.
30 years later, and it's been updated, I think we should say it in that way.
Contemporized.
That's it.
Put drums on it.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and a banjo.
Oh, you're rebel. You're
harmonica.
rebel.
No, not really.
We've all been rebels with the Lord when we don't know Him. And if we touch on your background, you growing up, you talked about trauma, but there's a lot of music in your family history.
Absolutely. My mom and dad were really pretty amazing amateur musicians. My dad was an audiophile, and we heard everything in our home from Flatt and Scruggs to Mahler. We just heard it all. And he was into electronics and would build speakers and sound equipment. And he played guitar. He was a flat picker. He played banjo, bouzouki, mandolin, fiddle. My mom was actually a pretty good harmonica player, believe it or not, and played keys. And they would play community centers around the area. And my childhood was filled with Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Jethro Tull, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix. That was Muddy Waters, B.B. King. That was my life, Dark Side of the Moon.
Some good music there.
Pink Floyd, come on, Well, I burned all those records when I came to Jesus, but yeah, that was my childhood was music, but I didn't know that I would spend my life doing what I have and making music. So yeah, it was very eclectic, and that's helped me later in my publishing life.
So as you look back at all the musical influences and your parents and just the environment that you grew up in, how do you see God using all of that? Can you look back and say, man, I see Him, taking this experience and that experience and this experience here to shape what you've done over the past 30 years.
Very, very much so, Stephen. It's like, again, the eclectic nature of my childhood, so many varied experiences, not growing up in a Christian environment, but becoming dramatically saved, gutter to glory, kind of a salvation experience. And I thought I'd be a pastor. I thought, because back then, 187 years ago, it's like we didn't have worship leaders. We didn't have the worship movement. All we had were song leaders. And I was saved in the Baptist church and quickly kind of went crazy with the Pentecostals. But I didn't have any model except pastoring. And it would be some years later when I really did hit a rock bottom and was just really kind of freaking out for a while emotionally, that God started dealing with me, getting me into some therapy and healing. We didn't talk about therapy.
We did not.
You were, especially in the charismatic word of faith movement, if you had mental issues, well, you just didn't have enough faith, and you didn't talk about it.
Pray harder.
Pray harder.
Believe more.
Pray it all the way, and I was right smack dab in the middle of all that, and so you just bury all the emotional stuff. But I did hit a rock bottom and had to deal with some emotional issues, and that's when I started wanting to talk to people about healing and write about it and share that. So I'm trying to get back to your original question about how those experiences have helped shape everything. Every song I write has some little, even if it's just my intent, has something of the healing nature of Jesus in it, right? Because we're all administrators, Paul said, of the mysteries of Christ. And so even if a song doesn't say healing or you're screwed up in your head, whatever, my intent is that people understand more of the character, nature, and attributes of God and come into their full identity in Christ. So I could keep going on that answer because it's very deep, and the way that I work with writers and their emotional needs, and from understanding, hey, we're all a little bit messed up in some ways, and so and then musically having the breadth where I can work with a classical song, I can work with a hymn, modern hymn, and I can work with crazy modern, worship. So.
And hymns, when you came to faith in Christ, hymns were very much part of what we did at church. Like that was the music, choral, and there were choirs, and so all the writers of that era, that's what they went into. But you said something that you, from basically rebel to transformed by Jesus. Tell us a little bit about what happened the day you came to faith.
I used to smoke a lot of dope with a little kid named David. We're getting really real here now. Is that okay?
Hey, absolutely.
All right, so I grew up with David, and may he rest in peace. He passed a couple of years ago, but turns out that David was just a back-slidden Baptist. Do we have any backslidden Baptists in the room today? Oh, yes, I see that hand. Yes.
Been there, done that.
David was just a little backslidden kid, and I was just a little hellion anyway, and, trying to figure out life. And David got his life right with Jesus and Cherry Road Baptist Church in Memphis, Tennessee. And my future wife was a charter member of the nursery in that church.
Wow.
So David got his life right with Jesus, got the youth group praying for his little lost friend, John Chisum. And I'm here today because of David. I wound up going on a youth trip to South Bend, Indiana, smoked 18 cigarettes on the way to the bus that morning, probably got on the bus smelling like an ashtray, and thought, how am I going to make it through this whole week of youth camp without getting high or getting – we couldn't get alcohol back then. We could get – it's crazy. We could get weed, but we couldn't get alcohol. What am I going to do? How am I going to make it through this week? And the first night, this little spirit-filled lady, may she rest in peace, Lynn, I would stand up and sing, ring the bells, let the whole world know, because I was a classical voice guy back in that moment. And she just saw that I was going down for the third time, and she pulled me down in a pew and said, I think that you really do need Jesus. You don't really know him, do you? And she went through the 4 spiritual laws, and we got to the end of that little track, and I heard a voice inside my heart, and it said, yes or no, John.
Wow.
And
I got cold
I
chills.
just, so did I. And that
Yeah.
happened to me.
I
But,
know.
it was very real. And I literally envisioned giving my heart to Jesus and spent the rest of the week telling little kids about, Jesus, and barely knew him,
Yeah.
you know. But okay, can I back up one step?
Yeah.
Okay, so at the time I mentioned that I was a voice guy. When I was in high school, back then that started in 10th grade, not ninth. But the choir teacher, the choral guy, heard me sing, and I guess because I grew up in music, I didn't really sing much, but he heard my voice and got me into voice lessons at the University of Memphis. So when I was in high school, I was actually part of the University of Memphis opera program,
Wow.
and I was singing, and
Yeah.
I started singing it at the Baptist church, and then developed a whole ministry around Memphis singing. And so that's why I would stand up, not even knowing Jesus, and sing in churches. At the time, I was the paid tenor at Graceland Christian Church. Yes, the king himself, Elvis
Wow.
Presley, and the church was on the property of Graceland, and right up the hill is I guess still the mansion. And I would show up and sing. Still a little hungover from Saturday night, and get my $35 for the week.
Wow.
And so, am I going too deep?
No,
Is this
no,
okay?
that's fascinating.
great.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I
really?
did, right?
So and Elvis was actually still alive. I mean, we're talking the early 70s,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
73, 4, 5. Were y'all even alive? Don't answer that
Oh,
question.
I
So
was.
Yes.
Elvis, his limos would use the church driveway and go around behind the mansion. So I think I saw him one time. I'm not sure. He never gave me a Mercedes or a pony, but
No?
no,
A
I
peanut
didn't-
butter
nothing,
banana sandwich or nothing? None of that?
Gave me
No, okay.
nothing,
All right.
nothing.
Other
but-
than $35 a week, apparently.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah. So
Not bad.
you're singing about Jesus before you know him.
Yeah.
What changed as you continued to sing about Jesus once you knew him? Like, could you sense that there was a massive difference in you?
My goodness. I mean, there's no way to describe that, adequately enough. That moment when Lynn sat my lily white butt down in the pew and really brought me to Christ. It was the first time that I felt this baptism of love, a baptism of, wow, it's what sustains me. Wow, to this day, to this moment, it's what makes me want to do this. It makes me. Oh, I wasn't expecting this.
That's good.
It's what still gets me out of bed every morning, and why I write the songs. It's why I want to do this.
It's good.
It's what's still real for me, despite all the ups and downs and all the crud that goes on. I wrote my wife a poem for Valentine's Day this year, and it's called Our Truest Love. And it says, our truest love is the broad river that flows noiselessly beneath our story.
Mm.
And that's how it starts. And this thing that I feel right this moment is that the love of Jesus that I felt in that moment is the broad river that flows in my soul, no matter what the story on the surface is.
Yeah.
That firm foundation again.
Yeah.
Completely. Oh, what a moment.
You guys
The-
did me this morning. I wasn't expecting that.
It's pretty wild because when you started talking about your testimony of Miss Lynn, and it's just like the presence of the Lord entered into the conversation. We always want him to be the focus of the conversation.
Yeah.
But to know, like, he's here and he gives us everything we need in the moments, and you needed him. We all need that confrontation with him where he says, me or not me. And that has marked out now your entire journey. And you have had quite the journey, John. You have written with some people that we know the names of. You've written with a lot of people that will know the music, maybe not the names. And that fascinates me about the Christian music world, is that there are a lot of people, a lot of faces, a lot of real lives behind the music that we all enjoy, but we only know the names of a few. in the subculture world, because subculture fascinates me, what does that feel like? I know because I've heard some of your testimony, like you want the Lord to be the one that is given the praise and the thanks. We all know, though, that when real people are involved, that there is ego involved, there's accomplishment involved. Do writers care that their names are not known?
I think it probably would be true to say that there's a lot of false humility
Mm.
in Christianity,
In any
in
part
any
of the culture,
field.
Mhm.
And I have, because we have programs with our company, Nashville Christian Songwriters, that you can come in and be coached. And I work with the people that are so far outside the Nashville bubble that the established companies would probably never give them a second look if they gave them a first one. But I work with people that just want to learn.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm a pastor teacher at heart. So it doesn't matter to me that you're 79 years old. I've worked with 80-plus-year-old people.
That's
Doesn't matter to me. But I have conducted, I don't call them sales calls, I call them client acquisition calls. But I've conducted over 3,000 of them in the 10 years I've been doing NCS. And they all say the same thing. God touched my heart as a child. I started writing poetry. I don't care about the money. I don't care if anybody knows who I am. I just want to use my gifts for God and get my songs out there. Liar, liar. Pants on
Let's call it
fire.
out. Call it out.
You do care. You really do care. And do we care that Chris Tomlin makes millions of dollars because he gave us "My Chains Are Gone, I've Been Set"? Do we care about that? No. Give him more money. Give that man money so that he can give us more songs. And we love him. We love Crowder. We love all of these people, because they have blessed us and given us a verbiage, a language, a voice to sing our praises to God. And that's what you really want. If you're an aspiring songwriter, you do want the money because that means that you're serving people. This may be a wild statement to make, but I look at it like, McDonald's over 1 billion served or 2 billion or whatever zillion it is now. They serve billions and billions of people and they make billions of dollars. And I know that our bank accounts we have to say this carefully. I think that it's okay to be successful. It's okay that your bank account reflects that you're serving people if you have the right heart. And I know people that are egotistical and stupid and hard to be around, that you love all their stuff. And I know people that really are nonplussed by it all. I think of a person named Linda Shazo that I managed at Integrity. Lord, you are more precious than silver.
Yeah.
I mean, she is so humble and so obscure in some ways. Linda, if you ever hear this, I'm sorry, I just called you obscure. But she's so awesome. She's just one of those people that I would point out that really have a deep humility in her life, and I really don't think she does care. And that song probably spent a long time on CCLI's top 10, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really kind of a contextual thing. I think it's kind of per person. I've met people that are just so beautiful and are so pure still, even with fame and fortune, but it's the same temptation.
Sure.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. It sounds like so much of what you're saying is it comes down to the heart.
Yeah.
And
100%.
while the heart may say, I want my songs to be heard by people so that they can worship God and so that we can continue to do this, there is the business aspect of things, and people still have bills to pay and families to care for. And so what does it, you think, look like to integrate those two things well, to be able to say, man, I understand that there's a business aspect of this, but I want ministry to drive that, and I want to navigate that well. How do you think artists do that well?
Well, I've had the privilege of being part of some pretty large ministries and companies. We were talking before the show about my mentors ranging from Kenneth Hagin to Bill Gaither to Don Moen.
Yeah.
And also the late Dr. Weber, who started the Institute of Worship Studies. Robert Weber, and it has a global impact. And God has, for whatever reason, allowed me to be part of that. I remember years and years ago with the Hagans when we would do these big camp meetings, and I was in the singing group. We didn't have worship back then. And we were actually part of the team that would count the money from the offerings. And literally, they would bring these big boxes of money into these rooms where we were, and we would have to like separate all the bills and roll them up and tag them and all that kind of stuff. And millions and millions of dollars on to the other big companies. And I've watched as in some cases some pretty crazy stuff, not that I know of with the Hagans or anything like that, but when big money gets involved, it really is crazy tempting to kind of get your sights on that. And then once you attach yourself to that, your emotions and your well-being rides on whether or not your bank account is high that day, right?
Yeah,
you know what I
right.
mean?
Yep. Yeah.
And so for me, I've had to come to the point that I've never had personally great wealth and great temptation. So, I'm truly humble. And that's a big joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm watching.
I am the most humble guy in this
So
room
humble.
today. But for me, the lesson that I've had in is stewardship. And it's always come back to that. And my dear wife, Donna, and I, if she keeps me till August, it'll be 45 years.
Yay.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a little tentative. You could call her. You could call her after the show.
She does
want
to have to break in another one at this point.
No, goodness,
no.
no. But for she and I, we've tried to live our life and marriage on good stewardship and on obedience, and just trying to understand what the next right thing is for us, and that's stewarding well our very breath, the day, the moment, the hour, the resources, whether your bank account's low or high. And so with our company, Nashville Christian Songwriters, it's always been about stewardship, and that's what I instill in the writers and the artists. It's like, if God blesses this and you wind up with a top song, you're going to need to really exercise stewardship and realize that He's blessed you with that for a reason. And that's not just so that you can feather your nest, but that you are able to bless and help others.
Yeah.
That's a little different though than when you first came to Nashville, because not everybody comes to Nashville to be a paper boy. What a shock to your system when you thought you were coming to do ministry.
Oh my gosh.
And then you show up and the church decides they can't hire you after they asked you to come for a staff position. And then you had to go and be a paper boy.
It was humbling.
No kidding.
I mean, so a pastor that I had known from the Bible school and wanted me to come. We were our spiritual gift during that season of our lives, my little newlywed wife and I, our spiritual gift was waif. And
it was what?
Waif?
Waif, WAIF, orphan, waif, peasant.
Okay.
Wandering
Yes,
you
got
were
it,
good
got it.
at
We
it.
were
lost.
Oh, you were
We
good at being
were-
one. Yeah.
we were
Okay.
lost.
Homeless, although she doesn't like to be. Yeah, okay.
No, she doesn't
Underhoused.
like that word. So we were offered a position, came here to take it, and they could not, for whatever reason, hire us. We had $40, no place to live.
Wow.
And we had really literally had 3 years of ministry hell. And sorry, can I say that on your show?
You can.
So it was awful. Our first 3 years of marriage, it's a wonder we're still together, because we really experienced a lot of trauma, even within the church situations we were trying to manage. And I just knew I was called. And so we had left the third church we'd been part of in 3 years, the first 3 years of our marriage. And I said, let's just go travel and sing. So we put everything in the trunk. We didn't have a place to live. And we went from little church to little church, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida. We came through Nashville to have and I would go in and preach the word of faith, would take up an offering, get about $180, and cry all the way to the next place. That's why I say we were waifs. We were kind of orphans.
Yeah.
Came through Nashville to have a concert. The pastor said he wanted to hire us. So we didn't concertize anymore, and we came here, and then he couldn't hire us, so we had $40 and no place to live.
Wow.
And I remember the darkest midnight, laying in the bed, crying, and she's like, "Can't we just stay here and be normal people and get normal jobs?" So I got a paper route, throwing papers out the car window at 3 in the morning, making $65 a week. She got a little graphic arts job, and we just were piecing together a life. 3 months later, I met Gary McSpadden and Bill Gaither. They listened to a couple of songs, and I just can't imagine that God didn't stop up their ears. Those songs were so stupid. They've never seen the light of day. And they signed me to a publishing contract. And that's when I started learning that I didn't know how to write songs. And I would throw papers in the morning, do odd jobs during the day, and write every single night. And I was writing with people who wrote beautiful songs like "On the Via Dolorosa," the way of Niles Bohr and Dwight Lyles. And I was so aggressive and so hungry that as I would show the Gaithers, my songs every week, or Gary McSpadden, may he rest in peace. And they would look at them and they'd go, "Well, yeah, this is nice, but who's going to care about this in 100 years?" And they started raising the bar on my songwriting and teaching me about the real craft of songwriting. And in my first year, I placed 20 of my own songs. And I would meet with A&R people, record company people, producers, artists. I would beg them to listen to my songs. And I started placing songs. And so the Gaithers hired me to be a publisher. Y'all, I didn't know what the heck a publisher was.
Yeah.
And I wound up growing up to be VP of publishing, managing dozens of writers, placing songs, winning awards, and I was kind of hot in the 80s.
Well, that's funny.
That's the best music anyway. I mean, you were part of the best music.
Some of
80s
that,
and
yeah.
90s.
Some of that was some great stuff.
It is the best.
Yeah.
It was the best.
So, how do you know when you have a good song? I mean, if you're, for any aspiring songwriter, they're maybe start like you did, writing poetry, and other people are writing poetry, and they're like, "I think this is what I'm called to do," and you're like, "No," you're getting this feedback like the bar should be higher, the bar should be higher. Knowing what you know today, how do you know when a song is a good song?
That is the million-dollar question, and I just don't think that you know automatically unless you're seasoned. There are times when I write something, I'm like, okay, I suspect that this has something to it, but then you start letting people hear it and watch, you gauge their reactions. But, I don't think you know every time, even seasoned writers, but you learn more and more about what you just develop filters and experiences, and then you start understanding how it all works. That's a big question.
Yeah.
One more question about the writing. If somebody really has a heart to write, like you started in the beginning, what would you say to them if they have not been what we might term successful?
I would say, number one, get some training, because we have this weird thing that we say, God gave me this song. And okay, I get it. And I've said that too. But, sometimes I listen to those songs and I'm thinking, I don't know, I don't always say this out loud, but it's like, okay, God gave you that because he didn't want it anymore. Or really, you're going to blame that on God? God is a much better songwriter than this. And, if I were God, I'd be a little ashamed to say that I wrote this. So I don't say those things out loud. That's
sure.
a little snarky, but, it's yeah. So I would say, number one, try to get some understanding, because people won't love your songs just because you love Jesus. And that's what I had to learn. And that's what Gary and Bill and Gloria would say to me. It's like, we see your heart. We see that you love Jesus. You go to church 87 times a day, but but that doesn't make a song a great, long-lasting, powerful song.
Yeah.
So learn. I mean, there's so many resources. We have so many free resources at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. We do have paid programs and all that, but just learn and be open and be willing to rewrite and make what you do better.
Yeah. By the way, that
bridge.
link is going to be in the show notes. So all you aspiring songwriters, go check out the show notes. Click on that link. We want to get you connected. But as you said, kind of a big deal in the 80s, and the 90s roll along, and I was doing Christian radio at that time. I don't know if you were too.
Yep.
And there began to be this bit of a shift in that worship music was becoming a thing. And even some of the rock bands, Christian rock bands I used to listen to, were cranking out worship albums all of a sudden. Petra and Third Day did that, something like that at one point in time. Right. And so you're around the Christian music scene at that point in time. What was going on? What was happening from an insider's perspective to all of a sudden now we're seeing kind of what felt like a shift in genres, or maybe the evolution of a new one?
I think on the spiritual side, God was sweeping the earth, and I believe still is, with a movement of worship. That's the only thing you can say. It emanates from, I mean, if you can go way back to the early 1900s, the Azusa Street Revival and the waves of Pentecostal worship that happened way back then. You didn't call it that, but the hymnody that grew out of that. Every move of God has its hymnody. And what we're still living in, I believe, is the result that emanated out of the Jesus movement and the charismatic movement of the 60s and 70s. We're still really in that wave, even though it's been modernized and we talk about modern worship. The spiritual essence of all that really was just cracking open way back then, in every denomination, in every country, every part of the world. The music has evolved, of course. So there's that spiritual side of it. Then there's the commercial side of it, right? I mean, there's the commercialization of all that. And Michael W. Smith was the one that really, I mean, the movement was there. People were experimenting with it and really wanting to worship even more. I mean, the commercial music will always be there, the artist kinds of songs, but there's just this undeniable upswelling of God that was drawing us into worship, anybody that was paying attention. And so Michael W. really is the one. I mean, he's kind of like the granddaddy of opening up commercial worship movement, and that was whatever year that was that he did Draw Me Close to You, Never Let Me Go. Beautiful, right? And so that's what really just kind of went and it just changed, and that's when Petra and everybody started kind of getting in on it, some for gain, but I think a lot of it just because that's the work God was doing in our hearts. So by then I was already at Integrity Music. My work with the Gaithers at Star Song Media had ended because they saw that I didn't really want to do what I was doing there anymore because God had changed my heart in worship. And I was offered a position at Integrity Music, and it was down in Mobile, Alabama, which is not the end of the earth, but you can see it from down there.
Right.
It's way down there. And I wound up managing 18 full-time songwriters, doing hundreds of products, and got into that wave. So I went from wanting to be part of it to being in the epicenter of what God was doing through Integrity Music. So I think, spiritually, it was just this giant sweep of God. Commercially, I think we all just kind of followed it, and we're still in it.
So do you see what we are watching in modern, what I'll call modern worship music right now, as a continuation or a shifting in that? I'm thinking, bands like Maverick City and others, where there seems to be, again, maybe just a tweak or an evolution in the sound of that. And you think that's just a continuation of it?
I think spiritually it is.
Okay.
I mean, to talk about that for a moment, again, I think that the move of God is still very prominent and very evident. I think that in some ways we're feeding the machine. In some ways, commercially, we're doing that. But I think that what I'm seeing more and more is the rise of independent worship. I was part of a church here in Nashville called Bethel. It's called Bethel World Outreach now. It was just Bethel Chapel way back. And because I was working at Star Song and God was moving in my heart in worship, we wound up writing hundreds of new worship songs that we eventually recorded and were distributed by Warner back in the day. And we were on the vanguard, if you will, of churches doing indigenous worship. You have to remember, this was before Hillsong released "Shout of the Lord."
Yeah.
I was already in integrity by the time that happened. So this would have been 88, 89, 90. Before that even became a movement. But I think that what we're seeing now are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of churches following that model, but also a lot of independent worship artists and ministries that are being raised. I mean, Maverick City, love them. Bethel, Hillsong. There's a lot of commercialization
Right.
in what they're doing. They're still sweet people. I've recently gotten to know Adrian Thompson, who is here in Nashville at Bethel, head of A&R. Great guy. You should have him on just for his accent.
Yeah.
Just for his accent alone. That's the only reason. No, he's a good guy. But so there's a lot of that. But I know there are a lot of great, wonderful, sincere people. But I think that what we're seeing now in the industry, if you will, is a great movement, wave, surge of independent artists and ministries. And I think that's really the wave of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's going to be fascinating to see. I just keep thinking the more the culture changes, the more the music's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I think that the Lord's going to keep stripping back some of these things and pointing us back to him and back to him and back to him. It's going to be so fascinating to watch.
Yeah. Man, we could keep talking to you for like the next 3
forever.
hours, but we
I love
unfortunately don't have the time to do that. So want to connect you with John Chisum, and you're going to find the links in the show notes. Hope that you will go check that out. John, appreciate you coming in and spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much.
It's been a fun conversation. And again, you can go back and share this with people. Get like and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you've connected on us with. And again, you're going to find links to John in the show notes. So doing that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And thanks for being our +1 today.